celebration of 30 years of Stowmarket U3A. In actual fact, as those of you who have had our newsletters know, we should have been celebrating this last year, so officially we're 31 years old. But it's good that we can finally gather together and actually celebrate quite a momentous mark. Okay, so thank you all for coming. It's lovely to see so many of you here. We have with us old members, members that were members years ago, and we also have some new members. So thank you very much for all coming. So this afternoon, first of all, we just need to remind... Thank you. Right, next, how the afternoon is going to turn out. Firstly, in a moment, I will be introducing some of our special guests that have come this afternoon. We look back over the list for those that perhaps have been members 20 years ago. We looked at those that had made a contribution to the group over the years, whether it be as group leaders or on the committee, etc. And those that maybe had made a special mark in their time. So I will be introducing you to those people later. That will then be followed by a talk by Philip Weir. He'll be talking for 10 minutes about his experiences when he first joined about 20 years ago. And I will be running a timer. Because Philip has, as those of you know him, he is incredibly well informed and has so much to say to us. But we don't have time to actually make the most of what Philip could share with us. We're then going to have a 10 to 15 minute talk by Peter, who's going to go through the history of our U3A, and as you can see, he's prepared a slideshow to go with it, so you won't just be listening, you'll be able to use your eyes too. This will be followed by the cutting of our cake. Alright, and the person doing that, Peter, will tell us all about in his talk. And then, as always at a meeting, there are notices. So there will be a short time where at the moment I've been told of 3 notices before we all enjoy our cup of tea and something to eat. Okay, so that's the format of our first part of our afternoon. So, on to our special guests. Oh, I've got to swap glasses. I always print mine big, so I can read it easily, but I didn't do the list. So, reading glasses from distance glasses, right. Okay, yeah, sorry, not into bifocals. Right, these are in no particular order. So, first of all, what I'd like the people to do, if they don't mind, they could either just stand for a moment, or if they would like to just raise their hand so we can see where you are, that would also be appreciated. So first of all, sorry to embarrass you first, but Connie Harford is our first special guest. Connie only moved away recently, so where's Connie? There she is, thank you, Connie. Connie was our secretary from 2014 to 2018. I was an active member of at least 8 groups. We then have Andrea Burton, another one who's recently moved away. So where's Andrea? For 12 years, she was our minutes secretary, groups coordinator and membership secretary. So a multi-talented person going on there. She also was the leader for Country Strolls, French Conversation and the Sunday Lunch Club, and was also active in many groups over the number of years. We go on to Harry and Sheila Ord. They were prominent in the computer group, the talks, demos, photography in many groups, the G&T trips, and TMV.
Talent Village.
Thank you. So, thank you for that. Then we have Wendy Atkins of Morgan, as she was. Wendy was a member from 1998, as far as we can tell from our records. It might have been before, but on our records only go back so far. And she was very involved with the computer group for about 8 years, and then was involved in many other U3A activities. We've then got Philip, who's obviously been a member with us since 1999, so another long-time member of our group. He's been... he has been secretary for 5 years. He joined the committee in 2001. He was chair from 2008 to 2011, newsletter editor, and prominent in the SAD network, which is the next level up of the U3A. He's leader of the discussions and hits and legends groups for many years, and whilst secretary organised many trips and outings, and he was active in many other groups, including computing. We then have Frida Delore. Now, she joined in about 1997 and was one of our short walk leaders. So, thank you for that. Then we have Alicia Beaton. No, okay, right, moving on then, but she was Needle Craft Club and Book Club with Mary Bradley. We then have Angela Betsley. Angela joined us around about 1998. So over 20 years. She was our town and village history leader between 2013 and 2017. And again, involved in many groups, raised money for charities from home as a private arrangement, but to be doing that as well, that's wonderful. So thank you very much, Angela. Next we have Shirley Bonner. She was a committee member from 2009 to 2012 and our official card writer for some time. Obviously a lady with lovely writing. Then we have our last two members are Pat and Bronwyn Leon. Have they managed to come? No. Okay. Oh. Right. Well, they were leaders of our town and village group, and he spent some from Pat was on the committee from 1994 to 2002. So those are our special guests for this afternoon. So thank you very much for coming, particularly those of you that have come from further afield. It's lovely to see you this afternoon. I'm now going to hand you over to Philip, who's going to come over and give his talk on his experiences of the U3A in its early days. At least I think that's what it's based on.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's really wonderful being in here and the welcome I've had. By George, I never thought it would be. But to meet people, and I must admit at my age, I still think of myself as being comparatively young, but I know Don and I stayed, and the number of faces I vaguely remember and lost their names and so forth, so if I don't remember the names, please forgive me. So far as the U3A here is concerned, Liz and I lived in Thurles 4, North Norfolk, and we retired here to Stowmarket in July 99. When we came here, we looked for things to do and we joined the WEA, who had classes quite regularly. And there's people here, I think you may have been at those classes, and I can remember them. We then discovered the U3A down in Thurston, Suffolk, and we became members there. And after that we discovered there was also one here in Stowmarket. Why not join it? So we did. In October, maybe the first one after we came, I'm not sure whether it was the first or the second. I came in here, I was standing down there, and one of the ladies on the committee came to me and said, would you like to join our committee? And I said at that stage, I'm new here, I know nobody, and nobody knows me. And she accepted that. But on the morning of the 2nd of January, I got a telephone call from the chairman. And he said, we are in serious trouble. That was Don, if any of you can remember the name. secretary was having a shower on Saturday morning on the 1st of January, and unfortunately collapsed and died. And they were looking for a secretary. Would you please do it? Under the circumstances, I didn't think I could say no. And therefore I became a secretary in January, and as has already been said, I served 5 years, 5.5 years to be right, because I thought I'd done more than my 3 years, which I should have been doing by September, when the AGMs normally are. I discovered just a short while ago a little red cash book in which I used as a diary for the U3A, and I recorded things which the U3A contacted me or I was contacting them about U3A things. And when I look at it, I am absolutely amazed how busy I was as secretary. And I really enjoyed that. Shortly after joining, there was an effort by some of the other clubs to form an area group, and Liz and I went to that just as members of the U3A. But it took off, and there were 3 members, a chairperson, a treasurer, and a secretary. And I was the treasurer there for 3 years doing that, and therefore meeting other U3A groups round and about. And indeed, one of the meetings that we went to was way over in St. Nate's in Cambridgeshire, in which the chairman of the U3A sat and the other things. That was a long journey. I see here that there's Tony Taylor, and at one stage, Sally, his wife, and Tony and I, we went up to the meeting in Lowestoft. It was a very interesting time to see the development of the way things were going. And I could tell you a lot more about that, but I don't think our friends don't want me to say too much. In connection, when I was secretary and even after that, my wife started taking interest in the tea and coffee over there, and she ran that area. And I also ran various outings during the year. And I started to make a habit of, I think we called it a picnic type. But we went out to enjoy the sun somewhere else as a group, and we hired a coach. And therefore we were limited to about 48 people. One thing which stuck in my mind very soon after I became the secretary, I was standing over down there where the 2 balloons are, greeting people as they came in the door, and I was surprised at how many men came in, looked around, and they saw a room full of women sitting down there, and they thought, I cleared off. We had very, very few men at that stage, but through our efforts together, one and all, we brought the membership up, the male membership up to at least 25%, and I think we were approaching 40% at one stage. So when you look around today, you see there's quite a lot of men here as part of the success of that maneuver, I think, I hope. I think I probably could go on talking about various other things, my experience and that, but really, well, one of the things I wanted to say was, when I was secretary and I retired, or decided to retire, I looked around and I picked somebody out of my mind and I asked them, would they volunteer to become secretary after me? So I had a successor. When we went on from that to a chairman, and and I retired from that. My successor succeeded me again. And from that stage, I to go back, the secretary that I took over from, who died, had started, I believe, although I don't think there's any records of it, a newsletter published 3 times a year, and I took that over. And I think the historical part of that is that the only letters which I did trail of the year from number 1 up to when I retired, and again, my successor, the same one, took over and has made it into mine was black and white, and now it is coloured and it's got photographs and so forth, so it's much more developed than that. In the very early days, whenever there was a lecturer here and they had a screen we wanted to show, we had there, the screen that we was usually the lecturer's one. It was small, and the people at the back of the hall really couldn't see it. So we decided to buy one, and that is ours. But since it's been bought, it is lodged and been kept on the top of those cupboards over there, and thank you to the church for allowing us to do that. We have done various other things as well, which I'm not going to detail, but I would ask you very much, I've told you that somebody was succeeding me time after time. I'll tell you their name in a moment, but please, will you please give the great welcome to Peter Kane, my successor. Thank you very much. Good afternoon and welcome, as they say. Oh, could we have the lights down, please? Otherwise you won't see a thing. I appreciate that some of you at the back may not be able to read everything that's on the screen. I've got a little bit in front of me here, and as we go on, I may have to read some of the things to you because the print probably too small for you to see. Also, I think it's easier for me to read things and try and make them up as I go along. Because they'll appreciate this is, it's going to be quite a session. So I'll start off. I've said good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'll read from my notes first. Hopefully, as I go along, I'll be able to get into the screen a bit and I can forget the notes. I believe it is important that we preserve our U3A history in the best and most accessible format for those who follow us. As time goes on, people are less inclined to hold on to paper-based documents, so if we're not careful, we could lose all knowledge of our origins and subsequent development. To this end, over the last 18 months, I've been preparing a digital archive covering membership, committee meeting minutes, AGMs and the like. Hopefully, in the future, this will be passed on through succeeding secretaries. It's been quite a research job, as over the years, many of the documents have disappeared. Minutes were handwritten in 2 full scrapbooks for the first 10 years, but only the second one has survived, and I could find no membership list prior to 2001. That was why, for today, we had a group of past members who were on our membership list in 2001 and are still on our membership list today, which means we have that tranche, and I think there's about 9 members who we can guarantee have 20 plus years membership, even if we couldn't pinpoint exactly when they started. Fortunately, using the documents that have survived and a wealth of digital information passed to me by Philip when I became secretary, I've been able to build up a pretty comprehensive archive. And I will say that Philip was extremely helpful to me when I took over as secretary. He did an enormous amount of things and fully expected me to do it as well. He gave me a list, this is the job, this is what you will do, and I did it. A fascinating picture of our progress can be found in the newsletter. Now this is good. I've
I've been able to build up what I think is a full list on our website, starting at number 1 in 1990 and number 2 in 1991. I can't find any trace of any newsletters prior to that time. Sorry, it's after that time, but up until 2000. For the rest of the 90s, that was. In 2000, there was a Talking Shop newsletter for 2000, which was, of course, the 20th anniversary. Sorry, the 10th anniversary, not the 20th. And in 2001, before Philip started with a new series from number 1 in 2002. Right, now to the main part. 30 years of Stowmarket U3A. I'll put that down. I will start this and see where we go from here. Right, the early years. Again, I'm going to concentrate on the first 10 years because there isn't enough time to give the whole history of the U3A. So we want the path to Stowmarket U3A, and you have to bear with me here because the technology is quite complicated and I believe we get lost. Right, we start off with the U3A, forgive my French, Université du Troisième Âge, started in France at the Faculty of Social Science and Philosophy. Now, when this was a very academic type of U3A, they started it off, and all the U3As that they formed in France, and it's still the case in the majority of Europe to this day, is that they are so closely associated with a university, and as a consequence, everything is a lot more rigid. The way our U3A developed was deliberately on a different pattern. So, the University of the Third Age was launched in the UK in 1982. Now, if I do that, there. Right, now you see here, there's a book on the left-hand side, it's called The 500 Beacons. Can't be any coincidence that our current information system is also called Beacon, but there must be a connection. What that meant is at that time there were 500 U3As in the country. Now, as you should all be aware, there's well over 1,000. So if this book was rewritten, it would be the 1,000 beacons. Now then, as things happen, I have a copy of this book, but could I find it for this? I don't know, and I can't find it, but I definitely want, and I'm sure soon after I get home it'll turn up from somewhere or other. Otherwise I would have had it on display and the other stuff like that. Now this is just an extract from the biography of one of the people, Michael Young. There were 3 people who launched it. Peter Laslett, Michael Young and Eric Midwinter. Eric Midwinter is the one who wrote this book, and he was very big in the U3A in the early days. I took this extract from it because I was quite interested to see that they managed to raise £10,000 to get the U3 off the ground in this country. Now, one of the things that they wanted to do to move away from the French method was they created these 3 principles. Now, again, I don't know how much of that you can read. How does it look to you from over there? Not bad? Right. Well, the 3 principles have been issued by the U3A right from the very beginning. These people started it. But each few years they change the wording slightly, and this is the latest iteration. So if you compare this with the first one, it would be quite different. But you know, like it is, you start off, you make a little difference, you make a little difference. If you look at that and then look at that, it's vastly different. So I believe that there's one significant part missing from this. Now, can anybody tell me what is actually missing as far as we're concerned? There is no mention about the benefits of social interaction. I believe that an awful lot of people join the U3A, all right, for the learning, the mutual learning, to fit by all these principles, but an awful lot of people join it for the companionship and the social interaction that they can get. And I believe that's an important thing that's missing from these three principles. Right, now then, we come to 1989, when Harold Turner initiates the process of bringing the U3A to Stowmarket on the 5th of April there. Now then, this was a big surprise to me. I'll tell you why, well, I'll tell you now. Because in the first minutes of the first AGM, Harold doesn't get a mention. And I couldn't understand that. Well, how can that be? Harold was, started the U3A off. And we always treated him like that, and, we said that, he was the one. But I found documents that explained what had happened. And actually, starting and investigating the U3A was Harold's job. He'd retired early, I think you can see it there. Can you all read it? Or shall I go through it? Can you all read it, or shall I go through it quickly? It was in 1998 he was asked to take on a project to set up a U3A. He carried out all the research to do it, and he held a meeting, and the prepared notice, the one on the left is the one that Harold actually personally prepared for the meeting and publicised it, and he got around 20 people interested in it at that time. But what he did then, in his very words, he left them to him. And he went off and did his own thing, he and Ira did. Because at that time, he used to work for Mason Cement Works. I've never heard of the place to work for it, but I'm sure lots of you will know it. And although they stopped producing cement in 1996, they didn't finally close down until 1999. And at that time, that was when, and up until then, Harold was looking after their retirees' well-being, if you see what I mean. But of course, when it finished, he and Aaron went to lose it. So then they joined Stowmarket U3A. So Harold didn't actually join until about 1999, which I thought was quite an interesting thing. Then, of course, Harold's career was very impressive after that. He joined the committee in 2001, 2005, vice chair, 2006 to 2009, he was chairman. And what was significant about Harold as well was the detail that he paid for everything. Now, there's a lot of information I would urge you, there's a lot on show over there, pictures on the wall, documents that were derived from Harold's archive. And there's one particular which has got all the details of the trips that he was involved in organising, both for the T&D, Town and Village, and the GNC. And everyone is documented where we're going, what we're going to talk about, what we're going to see. And I think that's very impressive. Right. The inaugural meeting was on the 24th of April in 1990. So this is why we're celebrating last year our 30th anniversary. And again, I just extracted this. This document is over there for you to see in full. But if you just glance through it and see it, it very succinctly summarises it. Quite simply, a U3A is an exercise in mutual aid. The key ideas of the University of the Third Age. I'll remind you, the U3A have dropped that altogether. They no longer like to be called the University of the Third Age. Is that all the men and women have the experience and skills to teach and learn together. They have interests they would like to develop, and they have something to give based on their job, their hobbies, their skills, and so on. So what's needed is for them to get together and share the learning and teaching in an informal manner. Now then, this was put out just as the U3A was started, and I thought it was a very good piece of publicity. It's very well written. Oh, sorry, I'll take you back to there. Should have gone to there. Right, back to there again. Right, in 1990, the Star becomes affiliated to the National U3A. I need to take the jacket off anyway. Right, so the Star becomes affiliated to the National U3A Third Age Trust on June the 1st. Now then, I know there was a document, it was a very comprehensive, posh document marking that, but it's another thing that's disappeared from the outline. So I had to contact the U3A and to confirm the date of when we became affiliated, and they told me it was June the 1st in 1990. And then we come to the first AGM, which was on the 18th of September 1991. Right, that was the notice for it, and you can see there was still an association with the Suffolk County Council, the Education Department, and God knows what, that all seems to have disappeared over the years. And I didn't realise this again until I did the research, that the original meetings were at the Youth and Resource Centre in Chiltern Road. All of you here must remember that. Yes, no? Yes. Anyway, Star moved to the URC Church Hall in October 97. Right, now again, this is just a transcription of the chairman's report to the first meeting. I'm not going to read it all. I've just done it just to so you can see it, and I've highlighted one or two things on the first page. And this is where my questions about how Turner came in, because it says in the latter part of 1989 that Pamela Pollen and I held our first discussion about the possibilities of starting Stowmarket branch. No mention of Harold. But how can that be? I would have thought that his name would have appeared in that meeting, but no mention of him at all, which I think is very sad. They got the ball rolling, and in our meeting we talked about I've highlighted the first groups, and what really struck me, most of us are very familiar, but we got Archie. As far as I can find out, I don't think it ever got off the ground. Anyway, the rest goes on to show the present situation and all the rest of it. I'm not going to go through all that because it would take much time. And he's done for projecting for the future. And I think the fact that we're here talking about the future is very interesting. There is one thing though that has struck me. We started off and they had 30 members on day one. Now then our peak, which was probably in 2019, just before the pandemic, was about 260. And that's not a big rise over nearly 30 years. I mean, it was still only 100 by the turn of the century. And it's always puzzled me, this. I don't know whether it's our catchment area or not. But there are other U3As that have started long after us. I mean, thinking of ones, is it Bonnie or whatever?
Oh, Blackburn.
Now, I'm not thinking about Blackburn. Blackburn's a different category because there was a big fallout. I think Blackburn was a spin off from Berry because they had a big fallout about who belonged to the U3A and who didn't. So that's another story. Excuse me. But I think it's Bonnie or one of those places up there. They started off about 7 or 8 years ago, and they've got over 500 members now, and I can't really understand it. So we ought to be able to draw in a lot more than we do, but that's another story. Right, now this Barry Reynolds, he was the chairman, he was the first chairman, he was the chairman for the first 2 or 3 years. And I was greatly surprised to find out that he was actually still a member with us as long must have been until about 2016. So after, and I didn't know, as secretary and chairman, I was totally unaware that our very first chairman was still a member. So he'd obviously kept a very, very low profile. And he's still alive. I managed to find out where he was, and both Lorraine and I had a conversation with him. And he was quite interesting, but unfortunately he couldn't make it today. Right, I'm going to talk a bit about the groups now. Well, when we finish up with the groups anyway. There are only 30 members, so I reckon we did quite well to get the ones we want. But I would like to highlight some of the groups planned, never got off the ground. Some came and went, but others prospered for many years. And I'm promising to this is the Town and Village History Group. It changed its name umpteen times over the years. Hey, can you hear me at the back? Good. Right, well, Town and Village History, I'll just pick up where I left off, seeing I've lost my track. By the turn of the century, it had actually split into two groups, Town and Village History 1 and 2. And it started off with Harry Miller, who started it, but this is why, and I'm sorry that Pat Lynn couldn't be with us today, but Pat took over as convener of the Town and Country History, as it was called for a while in '94, and continued for 8 years until Elizabeth Gray held the pot for a year before Anne Watcham became convener in 2003 to 2008. Next, Terry Potter ran it from 2009 to 12, and then Angela took it over, I think, am I right, Angela, in 2013 or thereabouts? To 2017, and unfortunately we couldn't find another convener, so it hasn't had any meetings since, which I think is a real shame, but there we are. Right, now then, as I said, there isn't time to go into the whole history of the groups, but I'll just give you a quick view of what happened over the first 10 years, and again I'll urge you to look at the website, at the newsletters, because you will learn so much if you can put several hours aside to plough through those. Right, this is the, and again, I had to fiddle around quite a bit to get it in a concise way so that you can see it. But I'm not going to read it all out to you. Hopefully, surprisingly, I think it seems to be quite visible to a lot of you. But I've tried to show the progress in tranches of a couple of years, so I've got it split into 4, covering the whole of the 10 years. And you can see that by the time we got into 2000, the turn of the century, the number of groups had doubled. I mean, I think we're 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. I think our highest number of groups was probably in about 2018 when we got to 28 or 30. The ones coloured in the side started but didn't last very long, and then some of them actually regenerated in new names and new ownership. Right, now then, I'll finish off because I know you'll be all getting a bit peckish, and Glenys keeps looking at me and saying, I wish I know you. Few pictures. These have come from Harold's archive, and I'm very grateful to Janet Nunn for donating Harold's archive for me to use to help for this, and to Angela, who has given me some pictures from the early 2000s from her archive as well. Now, I would also say, and I'd love you to see it, there's a rolling slideshow next door. If you just want to go sit down and watch it for a while, and it's just a snapshot of 2009 to 2013. And it's got an awful lot, and an awful lot of you will recognise yourself and bring back memories. There's a lot that are walking group related, but there's also a lot that are not. It includes our trips and all sorts of things. So I would urge you to go and watch it. Not the least is because I had a heck of a job to get it going before the projector broke. Anyway, it's going, so for my sake, please go and have it. Right, this is the first one. It's one of the very few ones where the names of the people are on them. So we've got Pat, and obviously this is Pat Leon, and Joyce, one of the 2 Joyces for the
walk with Joyce Markham and Joyce Walden, I think it was. I can't quite remember now. But the two Joyces, they were the ones who ran the shorter strolls before. The shorter strolls, the country strolls started very early and carried over as the country strolls until 2008. And in 2008, Andrea and Jenny started off the longer stroll. So then we had shorter strolls who did 3 miles, and the longer strolls, which is now walk and talk, did 5. That right?
Yep.
Good. Plan on remember that. This is just a picture from Wissington.
Peter,
Yeah.
you did mention that Mavis ran garden parties every year in her own garden.
Yeah. Well, I can't mention everything. Wait, was this? This Mavis, was it?
Mavis.
Yeah. Well, as I say, I do remember reading about that generally, but there was an awful lot I could have put into this, but we'd have been here all day. This is the strollers, and as Tina said to me, not a man in sight there in 1997. I think it's quite a nice picture, that. Now the bird group, this is interesting. Can anybody remember the name of the conveners of the bird group? Alan and Janet Sparrow. I thought that would raise a bit. This is from Andrea, the history group at Bilderston, and you can see another picture over there. There's lots of familiar faces who are here today are on that picture, and very sadly, quite a few who are no longer with us. Some old friends and a town and village trip to Sweffling and Saxtead Mill. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. That's my lot for the talk. Before I finish, I'd just like to chat about a lady who's with us today. This lady joined the Stowmarket U3A probably in about 98, 99. And she had a very specific reason for doing that, because it was the only one in the area that had a computer group. And I think that should target you to where I'll be looking at very shortly. And this lady became very active in the computer group. In fact, when the first convener who started it off was Mr. Killett, I think, passed away, then this lady took over the computer group from him in 2002, I think, and continued to run it for many years after that. Now then, over that time, and again looking back in the newsletters, that computer group must have been one of the most successful groups we've ever had. If you just looking at the newsletters, in probably 2002, 2003, she lists in the newsletter that there were 30 plus members in the computer group. Now when you remember that at that time there was barely 100 in the U3A, I think that's quite an achievement. Now then, within those, she had this art of suggesting to people that they would perhaps like to do a presentation on this, that or the other. Now what she really meant is, you will. Right? Now then, the group was so successful it was able to split down into at least 3, maybe 4, which ran concurrently, separate times of the month, different people doing different things, and people were very keen in those days to do it. Because unlike today, there was no internet to fall back on and you get the answers to all your questions just instantly. People had to learn things, then they had to learn them and pass them on. And Wendy was very good at facilitating, sorry, I've told you now, was very good at facilitating that. And I have a lot to thank her for,
because she was the one who introduced me to WordPress. She had and still had her own website on WordPress. And she introduced it to me when I first became secretary in 2007, and I started it in 2008. And our website now is essentially what I set up with Wendy's guidance at the beginning, and it's still the same as it is now. And just one thing, just to blow my own trumpet for a minute, but it's in respect to Wendy as well. This year I've had a couple of calls from other U3As in the country who are interested in wanting to know how I do ours, because they prefer it to theirs. So I was quite pleased about that. Anyway, I'll stop talking now, and I will introduce you to Wendy Atkins, who you will know as Wendy Morgan. She's going to cut the cake for us.